الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Welcome, brothers and sisters, to our second lesson in our lessons of Hanafi Fiqh Made Easy. We stopped, we were in the chapter of purification, and we stopped last lesson when we mentioned the ruling of the ruling built upon purification. And the last thing we mentioned was that the purification is obligatory according to the text of the Al-Kitab, Al-Kitab meaning the Quran, and As-Sunnah, the Sunnah, and the Ijma' of the Ummah. And this is something very important. We base our rulings, we base our faith and our ahkam upon the book and the Sunnah. However, with regards to the book and the Sunnah, there can be differing views and understandings of the book and the Sunnah. So a group of scholars could understand a verse of the Quran in one way, whereas another group of scholars could understand the verse of the Quran in another way. A group of scholars could derive from the same verse a set of rulings, whereas another group of scholars could derive from the verse another set of rulings. And they could be contradictory. And same thing with the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam intend by these words? Because yes, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said these words, and they're authentically reported to us. But the scholars could differ in understanding the meanings of these words and the intent of the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So even though we base the rulings upon the book and the Sunnah, within that there is room for differing. There's room for using one's understanding of the words. Of course, the scholars have put down principles upon which principles that one must use to understand the words of the Quran, the words of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And these are the principles of Usul al-Fiqh. However, there's still room within that for some difference of opinion. For example, the scholars talk about an order. Is the order always for obligation, or can it be for recommendation? There's a debate within the ulama of Usul al-Fiqh whether it's always an order in the Sunnah or in the Quran is always for obligation, or it comes for recommendation, especially an order which is not connected with any other supporting evidences around it. So it's just an order and there's no other supporting facts or other words that give us an indication whether it's for obligation or for recommendation, and so forth. So there's room for difference of opinion within the verses of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, except when there's ijma' on an issue. When there's ijma', as is mentioned here, when there's ijma', that means that is the only valid opinion on the matter. That is the only valid opinion on that matter. And always the ijma is based upon the book and the sunnah. But it makes it that there is no room for difference of opinion. The ummah has agreed that on this issue there is only one opinion. And that's why we say, especially in Aqidah, especially in belief, that our belief is based upon the book of Allah, the sunnah of His messenger, and the agreement of the first three generations. The ijma of the ummah, especially the early ummah. So, as regards to the obligation of purification, the Shaykh mentions, he says, Amma al-Kitab, as for the verses of the book that prove that purification is an obligation, he says, are the verses, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. And the verse of the Quran, وإن كنتم جنبا فطهروا, and the verse of the Quran, طهر بيتي للطائفين, and the verse of the Quran, وثيابك فطهر. So the first verse says, "O you who believe, if you stand for prayer, or if you intend prayer, then wash your faces and your hands up until the marafiq. The marafiq are the elbows. Wamsahu bi ru'usikum, and wipe on your head, wipe your heads. Wa arjulakum, and wash your feet. Il ka'bayn. Ka'bayn are the ankles, the ankle bones. So wash your feet until the ankle bones. And this is the verse of wudu. The verse of wudu. In it, Allah has made obligatory that the one who wishes prayer or intends to pray, that he must make wudu. And He's described the wudu. Wash your face and your hands up until the elbows, and wipe over your heads, and wash your feet until the ankle bones. Now, if we were to go into this, as I was mentioning about difference, how they understood this verse, is some of the scholars understood this verse, and we will see from the Hanafi ulama, is that this is the obligatory actions of wudu. Allah here in the Quran has mentioned the obligatory actions of wudu, and they are the washing of the face, the washing of the hands, the washing of the arms up till the elbows, the wiping of the head, and the washing of the feet. So according to the Hanafi ulama, and I think the Maliki, from what I remember, these are the 4 obligations of wudu. That's all that is obligatory of wudu. That which is mentioned in this verse. And they say that the Hanafi ulama say that they are combined with waw. So it says فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ. Wa. If I can color it. Wa. Wamsahu, again wa. And wa. All waws. And wa in the Arabic language is for connection, conjugation, to add something to something, and is not for order. In the waw, there is no order. So if I said Muhammad came, and Ahmad came, and Adil came, and Daniel came, and Adnan came, and I'm saying and. I'm not saying then. I'm saying and. It in linguistically it doesn't mean that I'm giving you an order, even though I mentioned the names in an order. Muhammad, Ahmad, Daniel, Adnan, all I'm mentioning them in an order. However, the waw indicates that they just came together and there's no order. So here they say that there's no order. As long as these four organs are washed or wiped over, the head is being wiped over, in whatever order it occurs, the obligation has been fulfilled. Whereas some of the other scholars say that within this verse, there is all of a sudden in the middle of the verse, after in the middle of washing, Allah has put wamsahu bi ru'usikum. He has talked about wiping. So he had put in the middle of washing, wiping, which indicates to these group of scholars, the Hanbalis and the Shafi'is, that there is an order that Allah has put in this verse. That all of these things must be done in order, in the order mentioned in the verse. And that's why, otherwise, Allah would have mentioned wamsahu bi ru'usikum at the end. If they were just, if the waw there was just for conjugation and addition and not for an order, but rather because of this part of the verse being in the middle, it shows an order. So using the same verse, the scholars differ on its understanding and they derive different rulings. A group of them say there is no order. The order is not important. As long as the four organs are washed or wiped, that's sufficient in whatever order. The other group say no, because of wamsahu bi ru'usikum, there is an order. And Allah knows best. And we will deal with that when we talk about wudu. This was just an indication to what I said beforehand about the understanding. The scholars can differ, and there is an allowance of differing in the verses in the understanding of the verses of the Quran and the Sunnah. But in ijma', it means that there's only one opinion. So this is the verse of wudu. The second verse, the Shaykh gives, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ جُنُبًا فَطَّهَّرُوا. And if you are in a state of ritual impurity, then purify yourselves. طَهَّرُوا. And the statement of Allah, أَن طَهِّرَ بَيْتِيَ لِلطَّائِفِينَ, and purify my house for those who make tawaf, those who circumambulate the Kaaba. Purify my house, purification. So purification is an obligation. And the last verse, وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ, and your clothes, then purify them. And your clothes, then purify. Surah Al-Mudaththir. These are the verses that the Shaykh uses as proof for the obligation of purification. And then it says, as for the Sunnah, then the Hadith, مفتاح الصلاة الطهور وتحريمها التكبير وتحليلها التسليم. That the key of the prayer, the key of the prayer is purification. So one cannot enter the prayer except with its key, and its key is purification. So it's a precondition to the prayer. وتحريمها التكبير. And it's making everything haram, or everything becoming haram, is takbir. When we say Allahu Akbar to begin our prayer, things which were halal for us to do become haram. Moving around, going wherever we want, has been made haram. So we can't go for a walk. That's been made haram. We have to stay in the place we are in, unless there is a necessity for us to move, and that move must be little. And we will mention that further on. And that movement must be for the purpose of the prayer and not for other purpose. There must be a benefit for the prayer in that movement. We'll mention that when we get to the prayer. And also talking. Before we say Allahu Akbar to start our prayer, we're allowed to talk to whoever we want and say whatever we want. But once we say Allahu Akbar, then we can only say those words which are connected to the prayer, and those adhkar and those du'as which are connected to the prayer. And all other words and all other statements are made haram for us to say. This is what is meant by tahrimuha. Its forbiddance is by the takbir. Those things which were halal have been made haram by saying Allahu Akbar for prayer. وَتَحْلِيلُهَا taslim. And to make those things halal again, they become halal again, all those things that were made haram by the takbirat al-ihram, is by us saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. The salam makes all those things halal again. That's why I said tahliluha. And the allowance, the halalness is through saying taslim. And this is narrated by Ali radiyallahu an, and recorded by Abu Dawood and Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah and Daraqutni and Bayhaqi. And it is the best, the most authentic narration regarding this issue. And he says another proof is the statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says, "Inna tahta kulli sha'ratin janaba, inna tahta kulli sha'ratin janaba, ala faballu ash-sha'ra wa anqul al-basharata." He says, verily, underneath every hair there is ritual impurity. Underneath every hair there is ritual impurity, janaba. Ala, so faballu ash-sha'r. So make sure you wet your hair and you fully clean your skin, and you fully clean your skin. Wa anqul al-bashara. And this is narrated by Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anh and collected by Abu Dawood and Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah and Bayhaqi. However, in its chain it has Al-Harith ibn Wajbah, and he is weak and munkar al-hadith. And he is munkar al-hadith, which means his hadith, his narrations are unacceptable. And his hadith are unacceptable. So he mentioned the two hadiths, and then he says, وَعَلَيْهِ إِجْمَاعُ الْأُمَّةِ. And the ummah is agreed with consensus upon the matter of the obligation of purification. Then he moves on and talks about anwa' al-miyah, the types of water. Because we talked about purification. And purification is the first chapter. And purification is a precondition for purification. It's a precondition for prayer. And prayer is the most important of the pillars of Islam after the testification of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So the first matter to discuss is what is purification, and with what can one do purification. And the main thing that we do purification with is water. Tayammum comes later. But the main thing we do purification with is with water. So we need to discuss water. What water can be used for purification? So he says the types of water. التي يجوز التطهير بها. The types of water with which it is allowable to make purification. بها, with them. لإزالة الحدث, to remove the hadath or the khabath. I remember we mentioned what is hadath and what is khabath. So refer to the first lesson if you have forgot or need to refresh your mind about what is al hadath and what is al khabath. And he says these types of water are 7 waters that can be used, 7 types of waters. Miyah is a plural of the word ma, which is ma is water and miyah is waters. And he says there's 7 types of waters that can be used for purification. And he says they are as follows. They are, if I can get down there. Oh, I've gone too far. Coming back up. Number 1, ma as-sama, water from the sky, meaning rain. Al-matar. Al-matar is rain. Ma as-sama. So ma as-sama, rain, rainwater. The second type of water that can be used, ma al-bahr, the water of the bahr, of the seas. Water of the sea. Third type, ma al-nahr, water of the rivers. Fourth type, ma al-bir, the water of the wells. The fifth type, ma al-thalj, water of the ice or snow. The sixth type, ma al-barad, water of the hailstones, water that can come off the hailstones or as they melt. Seventh type, ma al-ain, the water of the springs, meaning the springs which run, springs which flow. Jari means to run, but here it means to flow, because springs don't run, people run. However, springs, they flow. So flowing springs. So just to recap, rainwater, seawater, river water, well water, snow or ice water, hailstone water, and spring flowing water. Then he says the categories of the water which are allowed to be used as purification according to the Sharia are 5. The first, tahir mutahhir, water which is tahir, pure in itself, and it purifies others. It is pure and it is purifying. Tahir mutahhir. It's pure and purifying. And it is the ma al-mutlaq. And it is the absolute water. Water, as some have defined it, especially when we read the books of the Hanabila, الذي بقي على خلقته. Ma al-mutlaq, the absolute water, is that which remains upon the way it was created. Nothing has been added to it, but it is as it was created. Nothing has added to it to change it in any way, whether its color, whether its smell, whether its taste. None of these factors have changed. It remains the way it was created. And this is called ma al-mutlaq, absolute water. And he says that it is pure in itself, and it is purifying for other things. It purifies other things. And it purifies from the hadath and the khabath. And then he gives an explanation of what is ma al-mutlaq. هو الذي لم يخالطه شيء يغير صفاته من لون أو ريح أو طعم كماء الورد. It is that which has not been combined with anything which has changed any of its characteristics of color, of smell, ريح, smell, or طعم, or taste. For example, water which has changed and is no longer absolute water is rose water, because its smell and its smell has changed. Its smell has changed and its taste has changed. Rose water. Then that's the first type. Ma, water which is pure and purifies. Second one is water which is pure in itself and it's purifying, but its usage is disliked. كراهية تنزيهية, a disliked usage, not haram. Not the Hanafi ulama have graded being disliked to two levels of dislike. A lower level of dislike, tanzihiyya, and a highest level of dislike tahrimiyya. Dislike tahrimiyya is closer to haram, whereas dislike tanzihiyya is closer to just being disliked, according to the Jumhur. Whereas the majority of the ulama say that there is karaha and there is haram. There's not, and karaha is not of two types, but is of one type. Karaha tanzihiyya, just a disliked. And there's no karaha tahrimiyya. There's no dislike of the level of prohibition. So he says that this dislikeness is just the level of dislikeness and not of the level of prohibition, according to the most correct opinion. Only if it is little, if the water is little, qalilan. And this water, وَهُوَ مَا شَرَبَ مِنْهُ حَيْوَانٌ, and this water is the water which an animal has drunk from. An animal such as a cat or its like. So a domestic animal only, ahliya. So if we have water and it is little, and from it a cat, a rat, a mouse, an animal, a domesticated animal of the size of a cat has drunk from, then it becomes disliked to be used, even though it is tahir, even though it is pure. The water itself that remains is pure and it's purifying, but it's disliked to be used. So he says that the animal must be a domesticated animal. As for a wild animal, then its su'ruha, su'r is the remaining water after it's drunk from that su'r. The remaining water after it's drunk from it is impure. So if we had little water and a wild animal, I can't think of a wild animal, maybe a wild cat came and drank from it. Because it's a wild cat, then the remaining water would be impure to use. Whereas if it's a domesticated cat, the water remaining would be disliked to be used, but it would not be haram. And it would not be impure. The water itself would be pure, but would be disliked to be used. Whereas if it was a wild cat, the water would become impure and it would be haram to be used. وَنَحْوُهَا. And like the wild animal is the dajaja al-mukhalla, And like the wild animal is chicken which eats impurities. Al-mukhalla. Al-mukhalla is الدجاجة المخلى is a chicken, but it feeds on impurities. Normally, a chicken feeds on uh, on uh, wheat and on seeds and things like that, and worms and things which are fine for it to eat. But for example, a chicken which feeds on itself or other chickens, dead animals. So it feeds upon najasat, it feeds upon impure things. And we have that these days, especially in Western countries, and it's caused diseases in animals where they take the bones and the skin of chickens and they crush them down until and make them into pellets, and then they feed them to the chickens. This would make the chicken mukhalla, and this would make the chicken najis and not acceptable to be eaten. And as the fuqaha say later on, we'll see it, that the dajaja al-mukhalla, for it to become pure again, it must be caged for 3 days, and it must be fed pure food for those 3 days. And after 3 days, it can be slaughtered and eaten. That's the ruling that we will learn later on. And so he says that the same ruling as the wild cat applies to the dajjaj al-mukhalla, which we mentioned what it is, and wasiba' al-tayr, and the predatory birds, like the eagles and the falcons and the kites. These are the predatory birds. So they have the same ruling. They have the same rulings. And he says, wal hayya, and the snakes, wal fa'ra, and he says also the fa'ra, which is the mice, because they do not keep themselves away from, or do not guard themselves from impurities. So they'll eat anything, whether it's pure or whether it's impure. They'll eat anything. Then he says the third type of water, طاهر غير مطهر, which is pure in itself, but it does not purify, but it's not purifying. And that is the water al-musta'mal fi raf' al-hadath. And that is the water which has been used by somebody to remove a hadath. Like the ma wudu al ghusl, like the water of somebody's wudu, or the water remaining after somebody has made wudu or taken a bath. And the water becomes musta'malan, the water becomes used as soon as it leaves the organ, comes off the organ of the body. So when, for example, if somebody makes wudu and he makes it over a bucket or a bowl, as the water drops from his organs into the bowl, that water in the bowl becomes now musta'mal, becomes used. Once it has become used, as soon as drops fall into it from the body, it is no longer purifying. It is pure in itself. The water in the bowl is pure, but it's no longer purifying. So that was the third type, that it is pure in itself, but it is not purifying, and that is the water which has been used. Then he says, ولا يصح الوضوء ولا يصح الوضوء ولا يصح الوضوء ولا يصح وضوء أو الغسل بما خالطه شيء من غير جنسه كالخل. And it is not permissible, it's not correct to make wudu or make ghusl or have a bath from that water, from that which has been combined or been mixed with something which is not from its type. For example, water which has been mixed with vinegar, khal, فتغير لونه, so that its color has changed, or its taste has changed, or its smell has changed. Or it's not correct to make wudu or have a bath from the water of the tree. شجر أثمر أو زهر. The tree which has fruit or has flowers, due to the completeness of its mixing. Even if the water comes out without one squeezing it, such as the drops that comes من الكرم أو جذع الشجرة, from this karam. I'm not. I'll just check the meaning of al karam. Or from the roots of the tree. Karam is a type of herb. So this herb, the drops that fall off this herb, it's a leaf which is then made into a powder, and it's a type of herb, Indian herb, or the roots of a tree, according to the most apparent of the madhab. ولا بما زال طبعه بالطبخ. Or it is not correct to make wudu by water which has been cooked, such that its normal reality has been lost. Its normal characteristics have been lost. أو بغلبة غيره عليه, or that other than it has overpowered it. For example, tea. To make tea, you have water, you put the tea bag in, or the tea leaves in, and then the tea bag or the tea leaves, they overpower the water. They overpower the water, and the water turns into tea. And then he explains what it means for it to lose its normal characteristics. The normal characteristics of water as riqqa, its smoothness and its flowingness and its quenchingness and its producing or growing vegetation, or being able to grow vegetation. So its smoothness, its flowingness, its quenchingness, and its ability to grow vegetation. So he says that is its normal characteristics. And then he says the condition for something to overpower the water by mixing it in the water, by mixing the water with something which is jamid, which is solid but pure, which removes from the water its smoothness and its flowingness. ولا يضر تغير أوصاف الماء كلها بما جاوره من الجمادات كزعفران. However, what doesn't harm the water and harm its usage for wudu is if any of its characteristics if any characteristics of the water are changed, or all of them are changed by that normally which normally jawarahu, which normally exist around it, of solid matters, like on rivers, on the sea, of solid matters, such as saffron, or fruits, or leaves, ورق shajar, due to what Bukhari and Muslim narrate, that the Prophet ﷺ ordered the washing of the one whom his camel trod on his neck with water, and he was in state of ihram, by water and sidr. And sidr is a type of leaf, where he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, اغسلوه بماء وسدر وكفنوه, wash him by water and sidr and shroud him. And the Prophet ﷺ ordered Qais ibn Asim, when he became Muslim, that he should bathe with water and sidr. And the Prophet ﷺ himself bathed with water. In it was the remnants of dough. So he bathed in water, and in that water there were still some remaining particles of dough. And the Prophet ﷺ bathed, and he washed his head bil khatmi, and that is another type of flour. It's a flour which again is made into some kind of powder and used as a soap. Was used as a soap for washing. وهو جنب بالخطم وهو جنب, and he was in a state of ritual impurity. ويجتزي بذلك, and that's sufficient. And these are all narrations mentioned in the books of hadith. And then the Shaykh continues and he says, وَتَحْصُلُ الْغَلَبَةِ فِي الْمُخَالَطَاتِ الْمَائِيَاتِ, explaining how and when overpowering of the water happens by mixing with other liquids. إما بظهور وصف واحد من ماء له وصفان فقط لا ثالثهما. This happens either by the apparentness of one quality of the liquid, which has two qualities and not three qualities. For example, like the apparentness of its color only, or its taste. For example, like milk, which الذي له اللون والطعم, which has two characteristics and no third characteristic, or two qualities and no third quality. The two qualities it has is color and taste. It doesn't have the quality of ولا رائحة له. It doesn't have the quality of smell. فإن لم يوجد جاز به الوضوء. فإن لم يوجدا جاز له وضوء. So if this quality doesn't appear, then it's allowable for wudu to be made. However, if any one of these characteristics or these qualities appears, then it is impermissible to make wudu with. And also, he says that overpowering of the water can occur by the apparentness of two qualities of a liquid which has three qualities. For example, vinegar, which has the quality of color, of taste, and of smell. If two of these qualities become apparent in the water, then one is prevented from making wudu. However, if only one characteristic is apparent, then that does not harm due to its littleness. And Allah knows best. And then he says also overpowering can occur by increase in weight. Hence here the overpowering is due to increase in weight from mixing of the water which has no quality, has no qualities of color or taste or smell, like the mixing of used water and rose water. The rose water whose smell has disappeared. Because in reality, the used water has not changed. None of its three qualities have changed. Hence, the overpowering will be due to the increase in weight. Because one cannot differentiate between its qualities because they have been lost. So then he starts to mention certain weights. If two rattles are mixed, for example, with water which has been used, or rose water, or if two rattles, فإن اختلط رطلان مثلا من ماء المستعمل, if two rattles of used water is mixed, for example, or two rattles of rose water is mixed with one rattle of normal water or absolute water. So we have two rattle of musta'mal water, of used water, mixed with one rattle of pure water, So this makes three rattle, but it's 3-to-1, 2-to-1 ratio. لا يجوز به الوضوء. Wudu is not, if they mix together, wudu is not allowed, because the majority of it is not pure water, is not water. However, if the opposite happened, that the two rattle was of pure water, and the one rattle was of used water or rose water, then wudu would be allowed because the majority of it would be real water. So overpowering is due to what? Here, overpowering of weight is due to which type of water is most. So if the most water is that which is pure water, then wudu is allowed. But if most is that which is used water or non-water, like water, rose water, then the wudu is not allowed to be done. The fourth type out of the 5 types of waters which are allowed to be used shar'an, the fourth type is ma an-najis. Impure water. And that is the water which najasa has fallen into or has been mixed with uh, impurity, even if it's only by or even if it's only due to one's thought, that one thinks one is uncertain, but the most likely thing is that some impurity has fallen. That's ghalabatul dhann, is we're not 100% sure, but perhaps 80% sure. That's ghalabatul dhann. Wa kana rakidan, and that it is stationary. It is not moving. It is not flowing. Ay laysa jariyan. So he gives 2 points. He gives one that either one is certain that impurity has fallen into it, or 80%, 70, 80%, one is certain, one thinks that it has fallen into, and that the water itself is little and stationary, meaning it is not flowing. He says, if فَإِن لَمْ يَظْهَرْ أَثَرُ النَّجَاسَ فِيهِ, if the effect of the impurity is not apparent in it, does not show, or that the water is flowing, and the effect appears, and the effect is a change in taste or color or smell, then and only then it becomes impure. So if it's little and it's stationary, then, and even if it doesn't change in any way, it is still najis. It is still impure. However, if it is flowing, and then the some of the qualities change, so we see an effect, then it is najis. So what it would seem from this statement is that if it is flowing and no effect on its qualities happen, then it is not najis. And he says little. He said little. If it is stationary and little, then here he explains what is little. What is the condition of little? How much is little? Oops. ضابط القليل ما كان في المساحة دون 10 في 10. He says little is that which in space is less than 10 by 10. in a cube of 10 by 10 adro. Adro is the hand span, not hand span, the arm length, which here is roughly 5 meters. If we look at number 1, it says 5 meters, I think. 14 أصبع مساوي 50 سنتيمتر تقريبا، وتكون مثلا 10 زائد مساوي 5 أمتار. So 10 أذرع is roughly 5 meters. So a cube of water of 5 meters by 5 meters. Or that it is 36 أذرع 36 ذراعs, arm lengths, in a sphere. And its deepness should be to the level that if one was to take from it, take water out of it, one taking would not show its the bottom of it. Then he says, if the water is in a cube sink or cube pool of 10 by 10, which is 5 meters by 5 meters, then it does not become impure except by one of its qualities changing by the impurity. And then the 5th type of water, ma'al mashkuk, the water about which there is doubt concerning its purity. And that is the water which a domesticated donkey has drunk from, or a mule. And that means that this water which is doubtful, that the one who cannot find other than it can make wudu from it and then make tayammum. And the doubt regarding it is due to the difference of opinion of the Sahaba with regards to the impurity and purity of the animal. So the Sahaba differed with regards to the animal, the mule and the domesticated donkey, whether they are pure or impure. And that leads the Hanafi ulama to differ with regards to if they drink from the water. Does that water become pure or impure? And so they gave this a 5th type and called it al-mal mashkuk fi tuhuriyati, the water which is doubtful with regard to its purity. And with that, we come to the end of this section with regards to the types of water. And the next section will be with regards to the type of sur, of the leftover water, or when animals drink from them. And we will stop here. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد والله أعلم.